20 years on from their famous grand final duels, Collingwood and Brisbane meet in the grand final once again. The Magpies just sneaking over the line against the Giants and the Lions cruising home against the Blues. This is the final so far, brought to you by AAMI. This is the final so far, brought to you by AAMI. I am Riley Beveridge. That is Kane Cornes. Kane, our grand final is set. It will be Collingwood against Brisbane after the Lions overcame a slow start to beat the Blues.
Slow start, you don't say. The Blues kicked the first 5 of the game, which we'll get to, but there's the scenes. What a relief. That moment there is one of the better moments you'll feel in football. Grand final week is the best week you can have as a player. The pageantry of it. Brisbane were really classy after quarter time, and in the end, we get the best 2 teams all year. The teams that finished 1 and 2 playing off in what is going to be one of the most anticipated grand finals we've seen for a while, and I've got no idea which way it's going to go, but we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show.
Yes, we will. As you mentioned, Kane, Carlton kicked the first 5 goals of the match. They absolutely rocketed out of the blocks, but then Brisbane had 16 of the next 19 scoring shots. And they just slowly started to get the game on their terms.
Yeah, I thought they got control from the back half. I thought they were able to transition the ball from their back half with ease. I thought Carlton's forward line pressure really dropped off, and then they had some moments of individual brilliance like this. McKenna was shaky at times. He had a couple of really early and nasty turnovers, but then their pressure increased. Thought Link McCarthy had a few pivotal moments in the middle of the ground, causing turnover. Danaher kicked 2 in the second term. They kicked accurately. Thought Kadeen Coleman, who we'll get to shortly, was the one that really got them going with their ball movement. And Dane Zorko, the veteran, the 34-year-old playing in his first grand final, he had 11 in the second term. He had 5 inside 50s and was also enormous for them to get them back in the game.
Kitty Coleman changed this game in the back half. Now, this is a player that was out of the team for periods when Daniel Rich was in the side earlier in the year, but he's our Saturday star today because he was fantastic. 21 disposals, 10 marks, 11 intercepts. His field kicking was extraordinary.
It was unbelievable. Some of these kicks is as good as you're going to see. Like they were just right on the money, exactly where the forwards would want them. And it was interesting that he was the one prepared to take these kicks because early in the game, Carlton just had repeat entry after repeat entry and Brisbane couldn't penetrate almost past the logos, but then he got control of this game in the second term. He kicked the ball at 83%. Today, I think it was 19 kicks. He had 6 intercept marks, which would have to be a career high for him. So this one here, another pivotal moment, one-on-one contest to come off his man. Doesn't get a stat for that. So I thought he was the best player on the ground. I thought he was the best player on the ground by a fair margin, and he was a real weapon for them tonight. Daniel Rich, of course, has gone out of the side, and he's just stepped up to fill those big shoes.
Carlton kicked the first 5 goals of this game. It probably could have been the first 10 had it not been for Harris Andrews. I thought his first quarter, playing on Harry Mackay, but even the ability to leave him like we see there, he basically kept them in the game, which is funny to say because they were 5 goals down.
Yeah, I mean, Mackay had his moments. Harris Andrews did give away 4 free kicks on the night, and a couple of those were panic ones on Harry, but he's been huge all year. Like, this is the stuff that we weren't seeing at times last year, where he can look a little bit laconic, but he's playing with a different intensity this year, and he must realise this is a great opportunity to win a premiership. His timing to come off his man is excellent, but he also beats his man one-on-one. So, yeah, you're right. He's such a steadying influence back there, and without Payne today, he was the one that really stood up.
I thought he was great on Mackay. As you mentioned, Payne out. Darcy Gardner goes into the side. He played on Charlie Curnow. What do you make of Curno's final series? Kicked 78 goals throughout the home and away season, 3 goals in the finals, but didn't have the type of impact that he had throughout the home and away season.
Not at all. We had a really poor final series, and players' reputations are built on finals. It's great to win Colemans and do all that and have the season that you've had, but it's no good if that's what you're going to produce in the finals. That's his numbers, but what you don't see on the screen there is his opposition. So badly beaten by McCartan against Sydney, badly beaten against May, who was the best player on the ground. So he didn't influence, but he allowed his opposition to influence. And with that Gardner matchup, I thought, oh, hang on, he's in for a huge night and he was due. But Gardner, 3 games for the year, comes in and easily accounted for him. Perhaps there's an injury there that we don't know about, but he puts his hand up, he's fit, and his final series was poor.
It's going to be an interesting selection decision for the Lions this week. If Jack Payne is cleared, looks unlikely for the moment, still battling that ankle injury, and whether or not Darcy Gardner retains his place in the side for a grand final. Let's get to Friday night footy now, Kane. The other preliminary final where Collingwood beat the Giants. This was such a tough, gruelling, contested game of footy. The Pies just had enough moments when it counted.
Oh, my goodness. These are some of these final term moments that you're speaking of. Mason Cox goes and kicks his first one for the game, but then the Giants just did not give up. This little kick in here to Hogan was excellent. What a season Jesse Hogan had. He went back and nailed that to make it 1 point. Now, that's the last score of the game. It was 6 minutes and 21 seconds to go. I thought GWS just bombed the ball. I thought they lost all their dare. This one from Toby Green. These are the moments in football, and these are the opportunities the Giants missed that they will look back on for life and go, we had so many opportunities that we squandered, but Collingwood are so well drilled, they don't allow this ball to get on the outside. Repeat stoppage after repeat stoppage, and they just bottled things up and made sure that the Giants couldn't get any momentum onto the football and give themselves an opportunity to at least score a point. So they're so well drilled. Craig McRae spoke after the game how they've been doing one-on-one drills for 2 years, and this, you can tell, came out when it mattered the moments. But for the Giants, I mean, just what a season it's been from where they came from last year. They've got everything in place to be a serious football team for the next 3 to 4 years.
I think they had 5 repeat stoppages then the Pies before the ball finally got on the outside, and that's where they won the game. Will Hoskin Elliott taking that late mark. Jordan De Goey just about best on ground in this one. He's a player that's built for finals. He had 34 disposals, 13 clearances. He was so dominant out of the middle.
Yeah, he was. I mean, right from the start. I mean, as you mentioned, 13 clearances, and that happened right from the start. I mean, it was so obvious that he was the guy. He was the one that was going to split it open, yet the lack of respect the Giants gave him. So full credit to De Goey, because what he did in tight, tough situations like that, he refused to be tackled. And his ability to split the game open from stoppage, where the Giants have been so strong, and do that and burst away and give them that outlet so the disposal was under less pressure in such a high-pressure game was excellent. And as good a game as I've seen him play. He's got a good record in finals. But I just thought the lack of respect that the Giants gave him. They're not a team that does send a tag. You know, Matt De Boer did it for a number of years. They don't do that under a different system. I reckon they look back and go, that was reasonably arrogant of us to allow that guy, who was the fire starter from minute 1 of that game, to do as he pleased. And that's 34. He spent the last 8 minutes on the bench.
Yeah.
Imagine what it would have been if they could have got him back onto the ground.
It would have been an incredible story if they'd have lost that as well, given the fact they couldn't get him back onto the field late in the game. Finals are won on moments, Kane. Let's get to our moment of the weekend. This was such a pivotal moment in this game. Have a look at the score here. So the Giants are 11 points up halfway through the last. If Callum Brown can get this ball forward, they're out. They're out. They've got runners goal side. Markov comes through and wins it.
Yeah, excellent from Markov, poor from Brown. There's no doubt about that. That is a poor effort in finals, as is this from Taylor. Put your fist through that ball. We know you're a great intercept mark, but when you've got to spoil, you've got to spoil. So Brown didn't go hard enough for that football, and that's one moment that will haunt him and his teammates for a long, long time. And you lose the game by a point, and Taylor, who is the best defender in the game, chooses to mark for some unknown reason from behind. You lose by a point. You know, that's going to keep him having a few moments when he wakes up in the middle of the night. And I don't say this dramatically, but for the rest of your life, you think about moments like that, particularly if they don't eventually go on and win a premiership, which hopefully they do. But they had a number of those, unfortunately, for the Giants.
The matchup we were all anticipating, it came to fruition. It was Toby Green against Braden Maynard. I thought this was fascinating. So Green had 17 disposals and 2 goals.
Who won?
I think Maynard probably gets the chocolates in the end, even though Toby Green had his moments.
Probably.
I thought the way he was able to defend him one-on-one, and there was just nothing that he could do when Toby Green did kick his 2 goals. There was actually nothing he could do in those moments.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they rely on a system defence, don't they? That goal there is just... He couldn't have played that any better, Braden Maynard. You push him to his left, you're physical, and just half a step, and he's able to do that. But, yeah, look, they play a system defence, but I thought they adjusted that, and I thought it was really smart to do so. We're not going to guard space when we've got Toby Green. He's the one, so we're going to put our hardest and most disciplined defender on him, and he was able to do that as well. So you mentioned his numbers, but he ended up with 18, 5 marks and 5 tackles, Maynard, and to keep Green to 2 goals was an excellent effort. And I wonder what matchup Maynard gets this week, because you can take the pick of about 4 or 5 Brisbane forwards, which I reckon we've
Who would you go to?
spoken about all year. I probably think it's Quainer on Cameron,
Yeah, okay.
and that probably leaves Maynard on a Rayner or a McCarthy, or just coming off and taking the most dangerous.
It's even Zach Bailey, who could be another potential option for him. I want to ask you about Nick Dacos, Kane, because he started this game, obviously hasn't played for a number of weeks, but started this game on the bench, comes onto the field. I think he ended up getting 80% game time. I thought this game changed in the second half when he started going into the midfield a bit more.
I thought he looked so much better the longer the game went on, as you would expect. I mean, it's a credit to him to be able to come in the most high-pressure game we've seen all year. Like, undoubtedly, that was probably 10% more pressure than any other game this year in terms of the most we've seen. And to be able to hold up and do this like that there at a crucial moment with 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, he's so clean below his knees. I reckon he looks like he's worked on his strength in the 6 weeks that he's had off, and he was able to brush tackles, take on Tom Green there, take a bounce. So he's going to be better for the run next week. He missed a goal that he would usually kick with the curve around and the snap. He won't be missing that next week. And that moment there, I think he's a little bit lucky for that not to have even been looked at. And if it's not Dacos and it's not to go through to a grand final, there may have been a different finding. In the end, I'm glad that we've got him and our best players playing on grand final day.
I think there was enough leeway given that Pendlebury had one arm pinned, so he actually left an arm free. There was no way he could have known that the other arm wasn't pinned.
But he was in a vulnerable position, and the onus is on the tackler if the opposition are in a vulnerable position.
I think the other thing was there enough excessive force? But if Daniels gets off the ground and has to undergo a HIA test later in the game, I think there was enough leeway for him to get off.
I've seen worse suspended this year.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one that we will debate. I'm sure we'll debate it all summer. Kane, we've had a lot of questions today around what does it lead to? A close preliminary final win. Does it lead to a victory on grand final day? Have a look at that. It's really hard to tell there because we've seen a couple of victories, but the two that have lost, GWS in 2019 and Sydney in 2022. Yeah. Not good.
Nasty. But look, these two teams have been the best all year. Brisbane have beaten Collingwood a couple of times, albeit not at the MCG. So I think both teams will go in feeling pretty confident about their chances.
It's going to be an interesting watch at the selection table for Collingwood because Dan McStay went off the ground just before three-quarter time with this knee injury. He will miss the grand final, so heartbreak for him. Would have been a great story this week against his former side. Who comes in? Because they've got the option of bringing in Jack Ginnivan into the 22. They play with a smaller forward line. Do they play Frampton down back and it gives them the ability to get Jeremy Howe forward? Do they just bring Taylor Adams straight into the side and fix things around if he's fit?
The good news is they've got options. I think we've said a number of times they've got the best depth in the league and they've had to use that this year. So they would be confident whoever they bring in. If it was me, I'd go a little bit smaller. So I'd bring Ginnivan into the 22. I'd play Mason Cox more as a forward. I'd play Cameron, who I thought returned to really good form. His aerial work, his intercepting in the air was excellent. So play him more in the ruck up against Oscar McInerney. The one I'd be nervous for is Lipinski. I didn't think he was great. So I would probably put Lipinski as sub, bring Noble into the 22 because he gives you the flexibility to take on the elite small forwards that Brisbane have got. So whether it's Bailey, whether he had to go to Cameron, whether it's Zorko if he's there or Link McCarthy or one of those, I think he just gives you a bit more flexibility than what Lipinski gives you. So maybe he goes as the sub.
All right, one more game to win this year. This is the grand final to come, Kane. 2:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time next Saturday. Collingwood against Brisbane. Interestingly enough, it's going to be about 27, 28 degrees and very sunny. So that's going to be an interesting watch. Tired bodies on the MCG. I want you to have a look at this now, though, Kane. The first time in the AFL era that the two sides have played against each other 3 times in a grand final. So I've seen so many interesting matchups across the course of history. No two sides have ever played each other 3 times until now. Yeah,
it's great. And Brisbane, in their short history, building a great history of big games, of course, are the best team that I've ever played against in the early 2000s. So good to see them back there up against Collingwood, who have just been enormous. Like the crowd this year that have supported Collingwood has been huge. So they'll have that advantage. And I think on the MCG I would go that way. That would be my early tip, provided if they can bring the same level of pressure and frontal press that they did on Friday night. I don't know if Brisbane will be able to cope with that. But I think Brisbane right now, as they hit the pillow and recover, would be feeling reasonable confident as well.
Yeah, I think Collingwood they've been the best top side all year. Time to make it count on grand final day and win that 16th premiership. I think they win it. This is our last show of the year on the round so far. I want to say a couple of big thank yous. Chris on audio, Jace behind the camera, just there, to Amy and Sarah on graphics, Farmer on tech, Az, Moff, Ryan, huge team, Lock in the directing seat, and of course, Paul Baston, who is our producer, puts his blood, sweat and tears into this show. He is the biggest Collingwood fan you'll ever meet, so good luck to Paul this week. Thank you for your help throughout the year, Kane.
Great job to you. You've been an absolute star this year.
Thank you, mate. Thank you to Amy for their ongoing support as well. If you support Collingwood, if you support Brisbane, good luck next week. Hopefully you get plenty of sleep before that big day on Saturday.